All right, so when you think about the Victorian era, what's the first image that pops into your head? For most of us, it's an age of, amazing progress, real elegance, and this very polite, kind of buttoned up society.
Yeah, we picture Charles Dickens' London, right? Sherlock Holmes on Baker Street, a world of velvet curtains and these incredible gowns, an empire so huge the sun literally never set on it. It all feels so romantic and civilized. But lurking just under that shiny surface is a reality that is, well, anything but.
Because you have to wonder, for the average person just trying to live their life, surviving a single day in this amazing era of innovation, it wasn't a given. It was basically a matter of pure luck. So what was it really like? Well, the difference between the image and the reality is pretty staggering. Those cozy gaslit parlors, they were constantly leaking deadly carbon monoxide. Those gorgeous, elegant gowns, a lot of them were dyed with arsenic. And those charming horse-drawn carriages, they left behind over 1,000 tons of manure on the streets of London every single day. So yeah, let's peel back some of those layers.
Okay, we're going to start our day inside the home of a typical, fashionable middle-class couple. Let's call them Arthur and Clara. Now, their house looks picture perfect, but it's basically a chemical minefield, starting with the very walls around them.
See, back then, a simple design choice could actually be a fatal one. That beautiful, trendy green wallpaper in their bedroom, it was made with arsenic. And in the damp London air, it was just slowly releasing poison gas while they slept. Arthur's been having these chronic headaches and rashes. He thinks it's stress. Nope, it's arsenic poisoning. But the dangers weren't just hiding in the decor. Let's follow them downstairs for what looks like a completely normal, civilized breakfast. But believe me, every single thing on that table is hiding a pretty horrifying secret. First up, the bread. To make cheap old flour look nice and white, bakers would mix it with something called alum, a chemical they also used in laundry detergent. It made the loaf look great, sure, but it caused chronic malnutrition and some really severe bowel problems. The milk is so much worse. There's no refrigeration, right? So dairymen would add borax, plaster of Paris, and, get this, sometimes even boiled calves' brains just to hide the sour taste and make watered-down milk seem creamy. And on top of all that, this unpasteurized milk was one of the main ways people caught tuberculosis. And the final touch, the tea. To make the tea leaves look fresh and green, they were often bulked out with ash leaves and then dyed with a poisonous copper compound. So here's the thing. Before the day has even really started, our Victorian family has already ingested a whole cocktail of industrial chemicals and disease. All right, now let's see how these dangers follow Clara as she gets ready for her day. The era is famous for being so modest, but the beauty standards were absolutely ruthless. And I mean, they were frequently fatal. To get that fashionable, pale, kind of sickly look, Clara's putting on face powder made of lead, which is slowly poisoning her. The eye drops that make her pupils look big and romantic, that's belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade, which, you guessed it, would eventually make her go blind. Her corset is literally squeezing her internal organs, shifting her liver and lungs out of place. And that huge crinoline skirt, with its steel hoops, is just a massive fire hazard. Thousands of women burn to death when their skirts just brushed up against a fireplace. Okay, now let's follow Arthur as he steps outside to head to work. And if you thought the home was a hidden death trap, the city of London was just an open-air catastrophe. We're in the year 1858, during a summer so hot that it literally cooked the raw sewage in the River Thames. It created a smell so overpowering that everyone just called it the Great Stink. And the Thames was both the city's main source of drinking water and its open sewer. People thought the smell itself, the miasma, was what caused diseases like cholera. They had no idea the real killer was in the water they were drinking every single day. So where did all that sewage come from? Well, underneath London's houses were over 200,000 cesspits. These were just giant pits for human waste that would overflow all the time, seeping into the well water and into the foundations of the buildings right above them. And out on the streets, it wasn't much prettier. 1,000 tons of horse manure every day turned the roads into this knee-deep sludge of liquid filth whenever it rained. This actually created a job for kids, like 8-year-old Silas, a crossing sweeper, who'd clear a little path through the muck for a coin. When Silas couldn't make enough money sweeping, he'd become a mudlark. At low tide, children would wade into the toxic Thames mud, digging with their bare hands through raw sewage and broken glass for anything they could sell, a lost coin, a piece of metal. For them, a simple cut on the foot meant almost certain death from tetanus or gangrene.
You see, the dangers weren't just from bad sanitation. The very engines of progress, industry, and even medicine brought death right into the home, and especially into the nursery. In factories, young girls worked 14-hour days making matches with white phosphorus. The toxic fumes would get into their jaws, causing this horrific disease called phossy jaw. Their jawbones would start to glow a faint greenish white in the dark, and then literally rot away. The only cure was to have the entire jaw surgically removed. Now this object here, it looks like a pretty clever invention for feeding a baby, right? But in reality, it was so deadly that medical historians now call it the murder bottle. It was a true masterpiece of lethal design. That long rubber tube was impossible to clean. And since nobody really understood germ theory yet, it just became a breeding ground for bacteria. Milk would sit in there and rot, and the baby would drink a lethal dose of germs with every single feeding. It led to countless infant deaths. And what if the baby was crying because it was sick or teething? A mother might give them a spoonful of a popular soothing syrup. These things were sold over the counter, but they had almost no medicine in them. It was just sugar, water, and enormous doses of opium. Mothers were unknowingly drugging their infants, and a lot of them, they just never woke up. So the takeaway here is this. The Victorian world was a full-on assault on your body from every single direction. You had unregulated capitalism and just a profound lack of scientific understanding. And it meant that the food you ate, the clothes you wore, the medicine you took, and the very air you breathed were all potentially fatal. And that leaves us with this final thought. The true horror of the Victorian era wasn't just in the dark alleys or in some Gothic novel. It was right there on the breakfast table, it was painted on the nursery walls, and it was poured into the baby's bottle. Death wasn't some stranger lurking in a graveyard. He was an invited guest in every home, just sitting there quietly in the parlor.
Please like and subscribe.